Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our September 22nd, 2025 Board of County Commissioners 9 a.m. That's our 2026 budget workshop meeting this morning. Let the record reflect that we have 4 commissioners present. I'm assuming Commissioner Walter will be joining us shortly. She going to be joining us in person or online? On Zoom. On Zoom. Okay. We'll watch for that. Otherwise, Commissioner Kearns, French, Jordan, and CUNY are here in the conference room. We have a busy day ahead of us, so we are going to get started. So, Jeff, I'll let you start with where we're going.
We're going to start with risk management. You'll recall that when they presented a couple weeks ago, there was discussion around a COLA for the security guards. Since it's a contract situation, not normal employees who receive COLAs per the normal employee process. The one pager that Dan passed out already, you'll see it's about $30,000, $27,336 difference. He can talk through the numbers, but what we're hoping for today, you'll recall if the decision is made and memorialized before October 1st, with the new taxes coming in of professional services, that grandfathers us in a little bit and could save a little bit of funding. If the decision is to do the COLA, but we just are hoping the board is ready to make a decision one way or the other today, so we can do all the new paperwork until October 1st. So Dan, if you want to kind of talk through the numbers and remind them and have a discussion.
Yeah, great. Good morning, commissioners. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago, when we presented the court security budget, came in at a little over $60,000 increase. And most of that was due to the new tax. And then the county security, we were able to reduce that budget by about $31,000. So we cut that in half. And on that one sheet there, if you look at the court security in the 2026 request 3%, that's that 28,511, which is basically the 3% ask that PPC is looking for. And as a reminder, we did not give them the 4% that they requested last year for different reasons, budgets and some other issues. So the information that we added to this at the bottom, you can see the contract screening services and kind of the breakdown. So 2026, the estimated contract hours is a little over 27,000 hours. And then there's 2 options there. It just shows if the 3% is not approved, you can see the charge rate stays the same as it is as of now. And then the total estimated combined cost for 2026 would be that 906,934. But the big thing is, as Jeff explained, is that new tax. That tax just slammed us, and you can see that even in the 3%, if it's not approved, we're still getting hit at the 9.1% at a little over $75,000 was added to this contract just due to the tax alone. And then below that is the 3%. If it is approved, you can still see the tax is still heavy. It moves a little bit upwards. We're still sitting at a little over 77,000 just for the tax. So ultimately, the ask is the 28,511, which is the 3% for PPC for their services. And as Jeff said, if we get that answer and I can sign that agreement before October 1, it does save us about 6 months worth of taxes, which will equate to about $8,000 in savings between this year, the end of this year, and the start of next year. If you choose not to go with the 3%, we're still going to see that savings because there's no change to the contract. This is how that's looked at. So. And my concern is obviously PPC, as a reminder, they screen over 600,000 people a year through our screening stations. They They stopped over 10,000 items from entering the courthouses, or the facilities with courtrooms in them. They do an excellent job for us quietly. So yeah, if there's questions, but I'm hoping for an answer of either yes or no, so that we can sign that contract and save some money on that new tax.
So to get us to a 70% reduction off the 831, that's 2 positions, and with the increase, it's another 4 positions. So we're looking at laying off a total of 6 positions to maintain the budget. Am I reading that right?
The 28 is meeting your budget at 7% reduction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you were to approve this, they would be 28,511, the third column over the budget at a 7% reduction. So they'd still be at over a 6 reduction improvement. Because they have already absorbed the remaining of that 7% reduction.
Okay, all right. I was looking at the numbers down below, not up. All right,
We did that through the county security budget. That's where we absorbed the cost as much as we could for the court security budget.
So in the future, when you do the contracts with them, you'll see these accelerators in the contracts.
Yeah, it is a very odd contract to not have that in there. So I wasn't part of the contract, but moving forward, yes, we would have those already established.
Just to clarify, if the 3% is approved, your overall departmental budget is still flat.
Is it 3% or 0? Could it be a different number between like a 2% or a 4% for that matter? They've requested a 3%.
They've requested it. And we think that's pretty fair in the fact that we didn't give them a 4 last year.
They got nothing last year.
Yeah, they got nothing last year.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Jordan's request. If the 3% is approved, you'll need another 28.5 in this year's budget. So it would be higher than 1.278. Right? Yeah. So it would need to be an action. The board would need to approve them at a higher budget and staying flat. But that would be $20,500
Over the flat.
Yeah.
Sorry, that clarification.
Thank you.
or numbers. Or. So when we enter the contract with them, are we paying the contract based upon a flat rate regardless of how many security officers are there? Or are we paying per security officer?
It's per security officer based on the hours, right? So the total hours. And to reduce, you could reduce screening stations if you wanted to, so we talked about like. If the Broadway Center, if the courtroom was removed out of there, that would save about $75,000 roughly, not with the tax included. Because there would be no reason to have a screening station there anymore, because there's no court, so it's not required. We would not want to see the reduction of screening officers per screening station, like at our main entrances, just because you're going to have a backup, right? Because now that process is slowed way down, and there's potential for things to get through because you have one person trying to look at, thousands of people a week versus 2. So it would be, we would call it a dangerous step backwards And again, these are mandated, you know, we can't just not have them. We talked about even cutting, you know, if you close the annex screening station down and forced everybody to go through the main entrance. Or made that just an employee, people with badging, you could reduce it by one, but you're gonna overload the front, you know, the main entrance with screening. It's a tremendous amount of people that are screened.
So we didn't give them a increase last year. Was there any reduction in the service last year?
No.
The contract goes through the end of next year. That's 3 year.
We have a couple, I think 3 more years on the contract. That's a 5-year. This is our 2nd year into it.
Annual renewals.
Annual renewals, there's a 1+, right? And then they have an opportunity to ask for an increase if they want, that's written in the contract. It's written in there to not, they didn't have to ask until like October. We said, no, you gotta start asking in June. So, and that's part of what happened last year. Last year they asked late. They had underbilled us for almost a year. So the hourly rate was off. So by the time we recognized, when I wasn't part of the budget process last year, until the very last part of that. I re-looked at the numbers and realized that predecessor had used the wrong hourly charge for 2025. We made a last minute change to the budget request. And at the same time said there was no way we were going to increase by another 4% because of budget constraints last year. So that's why they got no increase last year.
So my concern is, I don't have any problem with the 3%.
Sure.
I think you're right, we didn't do anything last year. We need to do something. I don't have any problem with that. What I'm worried about is the gross number. And as we try and balance out the budget, is there a potential to save anything out of this outside contract? That's where I'm trying to find some relief. So
Late in the day, could there be a reduction? I don't see lines at 4 o'clock. I see lines.
Well,
usually
yeah, we
at
have
4.
to, I mean, by law, if the courts are open, we have to stay open, right?
But open, but could it be open at a lesser level where you do drop to maybe 1 guard
Potentially,
for the last couple hours?
potentially, I mean,
Or only the main entrance
Right.
at 4 o'clock, not
potentially.
the north entrance at the end of the day.
I do know that we made a request several years ago to have security available so that, you know, predominantly female employees in the courthouse would feel safe if there's somebody there to respond to. So I'm a little reluctant to try and reduce the force in the evening hours because I don't want to put our female staff at risk. But is there some other opportunity to do something? I'm just asking the
Yeah.
question.
And they are very proactive in trying to help the situation. They
Yeah.
realize this tax is, you know, a huge burden all of a sudden put on not just us, but to all their clients. So they're really trying to help us out. If you remember, we talked a little bit about the 1.75 hours that juvenile needs on the weekends. And that used to tie in with Public Works roving guard that oversaw their lots. Public Works has decided to go away with that, which left that 1.75 just kind of hanging out there. And they normally would charge 4 hours for that. But they are willing to just take that hit and absorb the 2 hours. Basically, they're not being paid, but still pay their officer the 4 minimum that they guarantee their officers. So, you know, PPC is really trying hard to eliminate and reduce as much as possible.
That's helpful, thank you.
I think Risk has done a great job with their budget, considering we're keeping it flat. And they have this 9% increase on top of that. They've done a lot of internal stuff to get it as good as it is.
And the sheriff's office has also collaborated with us and absorbed some of those costs that used to come out of the court security budget, so. They also absorb those costs.
So, were you online for the board meeting when the OFM did their projection for next year? So I heard the projection for next year in terms of revenue at Wasac, and then also, oh, maybe it was at LSC. They did it. Yeah, it was at LSC. They did the projection. And then they also did a projection for FIMSIP. And both of them were doom and gloom. They're not hitting their numbers. Their projections are lower now than they were 3 months ago. And so, and they're not sure. Well, the one at FIMSIP was not sure that there's anything on the radar that would cause a deviation, cause any recovery, cause anything to pick up with the. So it was very doom and gloom. So I'm just take that and factor that into what we're doing, and I kind of go, okay, how do we react? Yeah. Idaho.
Well, it's because we gotta keep moving. I mean, I think I'm okay with the 28. I think it's you to do that, I think. Speaking of the state, this whole sales tax on all these services now is gonna just be costing.
Yeah.
Everyone money. It's gonna be hard.
We were prepared to come in way under budget, unfortunately, until we got slammed with a $75,000 increase in the last minute. With the new tax.
So I hear 1, I need to get to 3.
I'm also.
You see a head nod and a thumb, okay. Looks like we've got that one settled.
We'll
Thank-
ink that one in.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you guys, I appreciate it.
So with that, we'll move over to Justin and his. Oh, we need the paper to mess up.
I think Jeff mentioned this, but we'll start to, now that you've got the board has the preliminary budget. Any directions you're giving us, we'll be tracking them in an overall kind of budget adjustment. So you'll be able to see a running tally of those as we move.
Can you forward these two numbers?
I emailed them.
But these are the new sheets.
I emailed them to Gina
perfect.
too this morning, don't worry.
You guys are too good. So they look very similar. One ends in 7 million, one ends in 9 million. And then the titles, you'll recall several years ago, under different leadership before Justin was here, we discovered there's quite a bit of mental health sales tax that the board was not aware of, just the way records were being kept at that point in time. And in that process, the decision was made to leave the balance of funds, the reserve funds, with Justin's team to work spending down. And you created a special revenue fund for the mental health sales tax revenue coming in. We're now looking at 26. This is the first year Justin will not have enough in that reserve that was left with him to meet all of his obligations. So.
Let's do this one first.
Oh, I'll go the other way.
And then Justin can talk about all this.
Bottom line, Justin will end with 7 million in his reserve. That's the BHASO reserve amount that he would need if things were being shut down and for outstanding liabilities. So if you start at the one that just says mental health sales tax at the top without the ASO, I'll let Tessa talk you through it.
Yes. We have a healthy beginning fund balance in this fund. So this is the mental health sales tax alone fund. Started with $15.7 million of a beginning fund balance. We're anticipating $16.8 million of sales tax revenue. That is consistent with the 0.1% for juvenile justice sales tax that we have budgeted in the general fund. So it comes in very consistently for those full 0.1% that the county receives. And then from there, we have kind of all of our projected expenses for 2026 as a preliminary. Most of these are very consistent with prior years. So we have detention services, and within detention services, they have methadone program, inmate substance abuse services, mental health services. That is kind of a team within the detention services unit, and then some support of NAF care, mental health, medications and things like that for individuals. Then we have the district court therapeutic court, which is comprised of district court expenses, public defender support, prosecution support, as well as an interlocal agreement with the city of Spokane. Then we have the Superior Court Therapeutic Court. We have combined their co-occurring and mental health courts into one line for this year. So that's why the co-occurring drug court has $0. There's also public defense support and prosecution support for individuals in the Superior Court Therapeutic Court program. Then we have a mental health professional in the pretrial services department, a mental health counselor in the juvenile services department. In 2025, you funded a pilot program for juvenile services. That was $145,000. They'll be back this afternoon, and we believe they'll be discussing that pilot project and providing an update on that for you. Then we have a mental health professional services contract within the sheriff's department for $100,000 that supports sheriff's deputies with access to a clinician. Then we have the Involuntary Treatment Act courts, which run through the ASO. So you'll see that as well on the second page that has Justin's team's detail. And then the ASO mental health portion of mental health sales tax. So all of that gets us up to about $15.4 million of kind of annual programmed expenses. Then we also have about $8 million currently set aside in the 26 budget for the stabilization center expansion, the capital investment there. And then an ending fund balance of $9 million for the mental health sales tax fund. There is a little bit of that will be programmed in the 27 budget for the stabilization center expansion as well.
If you take out that little bit she just mentioned, which is 1.1-ish, we have about 7.9 million to be considered at this point uncommitted reserve balance for the board's priorities. Any questions on that sheet before Justin talks through his?
So there are the two different accounts. I'm
Correct.
now looking at them with two different,
At the end of the year, you'll have Justin's account will just have the 7 million
okay,
reserve.
that's the fund 148 versus the mental health sales tax.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But this year, we're still spending down that fund balance, but going forward, we'll do one account plus the reserve.
For the court programs, county expense, is that just based on like requests from the office of what that expense will be for the year?
They're typically staff for most of them, with the exception of Superior Court. Their court programs are typically contracted out. They do have a court coordinator that we support with your mental health sales tax dollars. But otherwise, most of it is a third-party contract.
So that's the cost of that contract that
Correct.
they let you know. Okay, thank you.
And I apologize for this change out. Tessa was out last week at Workday Rising Conference. So Scott, Tessa, Justin and I came in early this morning to merge all information before the 9 o'clock. So that's why slightly different from what was uploaded. At that point, that was just Justin's showing where he was spinning into a deficit, needing some of the other account. We kind of redid the math. Show how we're taking care of that deficit. It's not actually a deficit, just different account. We wait for Justin to talk through his sheet.
Yes.
Good.
Morning, Commissioners, just a little bit of history. When we look back at the fund balance reserve where there was additional dollars, there's two reasons why there was additional dollars in there and why we found ourselves in the position of spending that down. Historically, we were able to offset most of those allocated costs, which weren't actualized till the end of every subsequent year. For the last, since 2019, so really the last 4 years, we've done a really good job at being able to offset most of those with state dollars. We find ourselves now in a position with the current state budget where we have been able to do that as effectively. We've scraped the barrel, essentially. So you've seen us move from 2025 into 2026 with the projected reserve going to a level that would hit our liability reserve. And additionally, that second point of why that reserve is there, the original calculation for the reserve needed to protect the county against any sort of liability. At the time we transitioned from the BHO to ASO was roughly around 12 to 15 million. Again, we didn't know what that cost would be. Subsequently, in the last couple of years, we've been able to get a better idea of total cost and actually what our liabilities look like, which is why we reduced that, I believe, Scott, 2 years ago down to the 7 million. Because it was a better estimation of what that liability would be, which is why we continue to remain inpatient liability. That would be costs incurred if all functions stop. There's still a 2-year bill window that hospitals and providers can claim per statute. So they have 2 years to rectify those, which would protect the county from any outstanding liabilities. We do a pretty good job of being aware of those in advance, but again, always want to make sure there's a buffer so there isn't any potential risk to the county. So as Jeff and Tessa explained, we're on our way to reduce our current reserve million down to the 7. Once we hit the 7 threshold, that's where the allocation or the annualized amount would switch over to from fund 159. So there's a lot of those numbers. Thank you, Tessa. So we currently oversee the ITA court, partly because with our close work, we also do a lot of the reconciliation with outstanding courts for members that we see here, which means we backbill those responsible jurisdictions. That's why at the end, when we try to reconcile, we actually get lower projection of the overall expenditures based on what those costs would be. That does take time. Oftentimes it can take a couple months, just like an inpatient hospitalization bill. So we oversee all of that work to ensure that the county then receives its due fund in response to serving other regions. Then we go into the ASO function. These are approved projects the board has historically and or recently approved, some pilots, some ongoing. Court evaluators are required to evaluate individuals who provide testimony in court. They're a third party that provides for every individual per the court's request what they currently are presenting as part of their defense in a civil proceeding. So that cost is generally driven by requirement of the acuity of the individual. So we currently have that about $2 million. We've been able to offset that over the last couple of years with state funds, and we do anticipate going into 2026 there may be some state funds to continue to offset it. But again, that responsibility is the courts, and we have no ability to change that or reduce that cost. It's totally driven by the individuals. ENT costs, these are for our residents served outside of regions, only Spokane County residents. This is where we then, for any costs incurred by those in other counties, we backbill, they backbill as well. So we rectify with that. Generally, we don't see many of our individuals outside of our region as it's hard to transport, but that's where that cost comes in. For step downs, this is, if anyone remembers our old years of doing the ALFs, this is a carryover for the mental health individuals coming out of state hospital. They have a transition in a step down facility where housing is needed. We pay a proportionate share of that. So it is shared by the individual and partly by the county. That allows for an individual to move from like a adult family home where there is support, mental health, to one more of an independent living. After a while, then they transition into fully independent living. It's that next step before they go alone. That cost is relatively low, and it's only for Spokane County residents here locally. Of course, we have the Phoenix, which is also our structured living for program, and then the two programs there with ISW we have listed with both Spokane Public Schools and with our ESD 101. We have our behavioral health treatment support pilot program with VOA that helps with transitional housing. That cost we anticipate will not hit the 243. We have that currently allocated out. But with changes in VOA's new facility and the medical respite, we do anticipate may come in a little bit less this year because they're only able to, they have to figure out what their recruitment's going to be for that medical respite, which offset the costs associated with what we're paid, only paid for what our portion of program actually covers and not supplanting Medicaid. The Lumen School project will be coming for the board on the 7th. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, of course, community hospitals are other inpatient treatment services for Spokane County residents, where the treatment is a requirement as part of court proceedings. So that could be a psychiatric hospital, that could be youth at PCCA, anyone who has no insurance and is a Spokane County resident meets that threshold. That's where we pull those funds from. And the last couple of years, we've done a good job of finding state dollars to offset that. Again, that is something the board has really directed us to ensure that there's coverage for Spokane County residents. In past years, when we've had to reduce that, we've received a lot of calls from hospitals where individuals are billed. That cost is pretty exorbitant. There isn't any negotiation there. By having a small amount, we protect a really unique window of individuals who may not have coverage or are transitioning between coverage. So that's where that money comes in. The two, Portland State and Ticket Health, are the licensing fees associated with the ISW program. That is actually a cost broken out contract that's over 3 years. So it's an annualized cost broken over 3 years. That just lets us use the software. They don't provide any other support, and they're not actually providing any service in our region. Then we have our NAMI, our guidelines with the requirement for utilization management review as part of the hospitals. We also have the expenses needed to run these programs. We have that allocation with the county. We have the ARP SPS carryover program from Innovia. That was a program that the board previously funded through Innovia with ARPA dollars and then switched to mental sales tax dollars because of we are still carrying that program. It actually ends in 2026 per the board's direction for the 2-year program. So we do anticipate those costs will be removed as we go into 2027. Unless the board chooses to continue that. Program, as board members, is for non-Medicaid youth being served in Spokane Public Schools. Those kids that current insurance doesn't cover, that also includes commercial, so it's not at or below 20%. For commercial, it doesn't cover those kids as well. And substance use, so it's not just mental health and substance use treatment. And then the board did approve an expansion for the regional behavioral disaster. This occurred most poignantly when we had the fires here locally. Our team was dispatched, and I had to dispatch our staff for 2 weeks to 3 weeks to go to the actual family recovery centers to provide support, which was very beneficial. We found that we were expending quite a bit of time, and there wasn't any funds to cover that time. So the board approved money to be set aside in case a natural disaster or some other incident occurred where we had to be dispatched. We will have money to cover that time, especially when a lot of it was over weekends. Then, of course, we have our additional programs for the teen parent improving academic success and the behavioral health co-response pilot program with the city. So those are all the programs we have listed with total expenditures. Again, I do anticipate at the end of, or at least to mid 2026, we should have some state dollars available. But until we get the final budget from the state, I anticipate the July 1st timeline. I don't know what our exact funding will look like. We are hearing the state is looking at reducing state funding again. Good news is because we were able to negotiate early last year and pay back the 10 million that the state clawed back. We are not first on the list for reductions looking at ASOs. It was very appreciative of the fact that we were able to come forward quickly and pay back responsible dollars. And we've seen as part of that protection, our existing allocation not be reduced except for block grant dollars. So good news for Spokane, being GSO, and I do anticipate going into 2026, we'll continue that projection with a relatively rosy outlook. At least that's my optimistic view. I'll re-update you in July 1st.
They're pretty amazing, all the different programs that are going on within the county to help people. I think as we go into this opening the stabilization center, with construction coming and then opening and not knowing all the funding will have to stay. I think we need to keep cognizant of these reserves for what those potential uses are. Just concerned that we open a stabilization center like we've seen on the west side and it doesn't get open. Put all that money into it and then it doesn't have any contractor because of the funding sources surrounding it. So that's what happened, as we know, in Linwood. In the Davis district, that they opened a stabilization center and they built one and didn't open it. So I just want to be concerned about that we hold reserves to ensure that as state funding is starting to get questionable, on some of these things that I don't want to open a center and not have it. We know it'll get used. We just got to make sure that we have the dollars to operate it. So I think we've got to be very cognizant of these reserves until we open that, make sure that we've got the funding sources moving forward that we'll be able to continue making them.
Now we really pointed in the first 6 months, generally that's the critical time for a facility to have operating costs to catch up billing necessary for the services being provided. However, the good news is lessons learned with the other facilities, they didn't do concurrent planning with billing at the same time that they were doing building. We're doing that. In fact, one of the things I'll be asking the board as we look towards the next leg session is the ask for including the 23-hour crisis relief non-Medicaid portion of funding into the state, which is not currently added as part of the state's plan for behavioral health. It's if there's available resources, even though the state has allocated money for the Medicaid portion and identified it as a necessary resource. So that's a big gap that, in fact, the HCA just released their state legislative ask, which does include covering up to 7 facilities as part of the first round. I believe in my conversations as well as a lot of push some of the board members, one of those is ours. They have not stated that yet. I hope to be able to vocalize it to a greater extent to the state, ensure that one of those 7 is ours, as well as maybe some local representatives. That would cover currently the projected 25 to 30% of non-Medicaid funding that we anticipate will be needed. 60% is roughly going to be Medicaid, and then the delta is going to be the what ifs, those that are covered by commercial, but commercial isn't paying for it because it's a unique service that isn't part of that package, and others whose Medicaid or Medicare falls out in the middle of it or they're on a spend down. So that's that remaining 5 to 10% of delta that we still need to figure out. So if we can get that covered with the mental sales tax, current rough estimate, stress this, it's rough, somewhere around 9 million annually to operate the crisis and sobering portion. Sobering dollars that we'd be able to use to offset that sobering component. And we have some mental sales tax that could offset a sliver of those other individuals who drop, basically shifting what we currently have provided to SRC to cover those coming in the door. Because there is expanded amount for individuals here outside of that 220 to 330 FPL or poverty level. And then the remainder will be made up with the other state dollars. I believe at this stage, we're in a really good position to have that fully funded operationally in advance. And I actually think that rough estimate is high, will actually be the cost. So with that current projection, we're already 2 years in advance of 1 year and a couple of months. And I'm even having that information is more than those other facilities have. So we're in a good position.
So we probably need to add that to our legislative agenda to make sure that we're requesting that to make sure that we're part of the. But yeah, I think last year that was part of the process. It was only going to be east side or west side facility.
Correct.
And just kind of forgot that Spokane existed.
That is the feeling we got, which is why we put that forward. And we just heard from HCA last week that they released that ask, which is me rounding on Jeff today going, hey, maybe add this because we'll want to.
Because as we just talked about the legislative agendas last week, there's not, I don't think there's a lot that the state's gonna be doing and providing additional funding or any of that. But if they're gonna be providing funding, we wanna make sure that we are out there getting part of that versus, I remember last year, that bill was just gonna be looking at facilities on the west side because of the problems that they saw, where they were trying to open facilities and not being able to get them open. They got them constructed, as we all know, it's easy to do construction and get construction dollars, but then it's like, how do you operate it? So I think it's gonna be imperative that we push to make sure that, talking to our local legislators, that we get Spokane.
Yes.
As well as, I think, as we worked hard to get the emergency dollars back into the community instead of with the MCOs. So I don't know if there's gonna be any new bill on that this year or not that we need to be paying attention to and aware of. 'Cause again, it's not looking at the state budget, it's looking at how it's allocated, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure we're doing for citizens. So 1813.
1813 was the expansion of the,
Yeah.
where crisis relief was included as part of the delegated responsibilities for crisis services. But was not included in that bill, and that's where I hope the new cleanup bill will come, is the non-Medicaid portion. So they include the Medicaid, and we're already having those initial conversations, which is great. It's not even built yet, we're already having conversations about what that will look like. But there, like I said, there's a big gap of funding that they didn't. So we'll keep you apprised. That's gonna be moving forward. Like I said, we're in the early stages. One of the big asks though that we heard, I know this is, I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this, so Mike, you can reach over and, throw something at me, but they really want a name to go along with the ask. And currently we have not got a final name. Just keep calling it stabilization expansion or crisis relief and sobering center. And so they look forward to having a name to rally behind.
Very good. Well, we haven't brought names forward to the board yet.
Yes, we are,
Right, is there brainstorming?
there's a lot of brainstorming.
Ready.
Stiff. In fact, I think it'll be a hard decision for the board to make, go through what the options may be.
And you guys are, legal's doing the work to make sure that we're not doing any names for trademarks or any of that.
That will be one of the asks. Yeah. Like I said, we're a little early on that one. But it would probably behoove us as we look towards the live session to get some direction of what we're calling it in a unified way.
Yeah.
That way, we have the legislators not.
I think we were hoping to do that before the state of the county, but it didn't happen. So I would encourage us to get that process in front of the board here soon, so we can talk about it. Oh, there we go, Pat. Pat Bell.
Good morning. I was just going to let you know that we have 3 names on the table and I can email them out to you today. I don't think I heard back from Mike and Justin, or maybe they like all 3 equally. But the 3 names are acronyms and I'll send you those this morning. CARE, C-A-R-E, PATH, P-A-T-H, or CEDAR, C-E-D-A-R. So I'll send you some more information on those and we can begin the deliberations.
Okay. That'd be great, because I think, yes, it would be nice to have a name to put with it. Especially as we look to do a groundbreaking. And just for ease of not saying the 23 hours sobering center added to our stabilization center compound.
Explains it.
It's a lot of words.
If you tell them the cedar, they're gonna say, what's the cedar? And so then you gotta explain it to them, so.
So. So I, yeah. Yes, Pat, once again.
Nope, sorry.
Oh, taking it down, okay. Very good, okay.
I was looking at the other mental health sales tax documents, scratching my head, trying to compare them, so this is much better, so thanks for those who worked on it.
Well, hopefully this provides a lot more clarity for the board and for the community. Having it really clear that what will remain in Justin's community services would be the $7 million of the insurance liability. So you know that's parked over there to cover it, and then clarity on what is meaning in a fund balance that has been uncommitted by the commissioners, so the everyone has the same talking points for clarity. So
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. And I think as, you know, as we know, is opening up, you know, as we start the groundbreaking, we start opening up the stabilization center in another year and just the expansion we're doing with STARS and all of that. I mean, there's you don't want to spend it all. You have zero to work with in the future. So that's why you have reserves.
Well, and Justin has done an amazing job bringing in other grants in recent years. So we're not spending our full revenue each year. But as the playing field has changed, we're not seeing that as being as much opportunity going forward. So while we've been able to be built up, that's probably changed.
and I think we worked on this morning and we'll do some more kind of assimilation of it, but it's not as clear right now, but if you look at all of these, you add all of the programmed dollars, so we have 16.8 million in estimated 1/10 coming in. And all of the programmatic uses of that is 16.4 million. So there is a utilization of the vast majority of the mental health sales tax in any given year. And then with the 9 million remaining, a little bit of that's for the price relief and sobering center, but we'll make that a little bit clearer on here too when we continue to refine this stuff.
We've asked Justin to hang out the rest of the morning because we have district court and superior court coming up next. They'll have some possible nexus with mental health in their presentations. So Justin will be here. Should you have questions otherwise.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, we're ready for district court.
You mean that what more?
Happened to see it mentioned in their presentations.
And board is a full letter either.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think you guys can take this. Chris is gonna scooch down that chair, be available. That one there.
Richard Jordan, great attire choice, go Mariners,
Big weekend.
clean sweep of the Astros, so great weekend for Seattle sports.
Good morning, welcome for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
I'll let you go ahead and just get started.
Well, outstanding, thank you, and want to thank the board and everybody for letting us be here. And explain how we're spending millions of taxpayer dollars effectively, being responsible stewards of the public health. I'm Patrick Johnson. I'm the presiding judge for Spokane District Court. This is Jeff Smith, our assistant presiding. Get right into our budget. I do want to thank the people who actually crunched the numbers and understand this better than I do. John Wintershire, our court administrator and assistant court administrator, along with our finance people who were answering last minute questions for me on a Friday afternoon. So I could try to be somewhat intelligent in front of you folks. So thank you. We could go to slide 2 here. This is kind of a breakdown of our budget. You see we're at almost $7.3 million. Almost all of our budget, it's people. A lot of judge money going in there, a lot of staff money going in there. Some money coming in from a general fund transfer and our M&O budget. We have 57 general fund employees right now. We also have some other employees who are not considered general fund employees. A total of 74 folks working in district court, including the probation department, judges, and all the clerks and JAs and judicial assistants that we have. There's no questions on that. We can move on to the next slide. All right, so we've been given challenging budget targets. Our current budget, we're holding that together. I like to tell people with Band-Aids and duct tape. That been losing people over the years, but our business isn't going down. We are up 6% in terms of year-over-year filings. We're going through about 48,000 filings in district court. About half of those are infractions of various kinds, traffic tickets, parking tickets. We also have a growing number of civil cases that include name changes and actual lawsuits between parties. In terms of what's going up for us, some of the criminal is going up, to my surprise. Driving under the influence, we have more filings this year, year over year. Don't know where Uber comes into this, but I thought that number would go down. So that's a lot of where our numbers are going. To keep our budget together, we have authorized in the last year about 2,600 hours of overtime or comp time, which is a lot. That tells me that we're already really struggling on the number of people we have. But I understand times are tough. We're all trying to make it through, and we took our challenge seriously to balance our budget according to the requirements provided to us by the Board of County Commissioners. So we had another body, somebody in the civil department took a new job, isn't with us, so we are not filling that position in an effort to make our budget target. And it looks like we won't be filling that position for next year. We're going to absorb that as a loss. Crunching all the numbers, I appreciate the people who really understand the process and can go line by line through what we have. We were able to discover that we were double counted on one of our clerks. And so once we discovered that and had it verified, that helped us out. That reduced our total target that we needed. Still looking at about $51,000 to reduce our budget. So we have planned to do that. What we are proposing to do, we believe we will have unspent salary from 2025. We would like to roll that over. Combination with attrition, we think we can get there. That's our preferred method of balancing that $51,713 to bring us into compliance, bring our budget even. If not, we do have Plan B and C, other funds, temporary funds, I would note, for essentially permanent positions. But yeah, if we needed to kick that can down the road for next year, we would sure try to do that. I think the projections for next year aren't any more favorable than they are this year. So that may not be a long-term solution for us, but we can get there with rolling over unspent salary. We could go to the next slide. We do have a request of the county commissioners. In our budget, we have something of an oddity in that out of our district court budget, we're paying almost $75,000 a year to rent space from the Valley courtroom. We don't, in our budget, rent space from any other building. Even stranger, in my view, we are not signatories of that agreement. So in other words, there's no judge that signed this. And this is strictly a Board of County Commissioners decision, which is fine. But then it comes out of our budget. So we didn't agree to it. We don't usually pay for space, but we were obligated because of the decision that the board made. What we would like is if maybe the board would absorb that as an expense. If that's a political decision that makes sense to have a good partnership with the Valley. And I think I speak for all of us. We enjoy our cooperation with the Valley. They have been good partners for us. We charge them for our services. So there's some money coming in, but we don't necessarily need to rent their office space or their building out there. What they have out there, if you're not familiar, they have law enforcement out there and then a courtroom. So mostly we have infractions. We have people coming out. Sometimes people are traveling a long way to get to the valley. They come from Arrowway Heights to go out to the valley to contest a traffic ticket. But I think there are a couple ways maybe we could look at this, maybe an offset of accounts in that we already charge them for services. Maybe this could be looked at as an offset, a way to incorporate that expense that doesn't take it directly out of our budget. Would be my hope. That'd be kind of a wish list, or if we were maybe on the contract as district court and could have some say in negotiating that space, that would be helpful for us. But that something I think we've been renting space out there for a long time. But it's something that I hope you'll keep in mind and maybe give us a little latitude on that. Yeah. About $75,000 a
Okay,
year
that's-
to rent the space out the valley.
Okay.
74 and change, yeah.
And we say it's a Valley precinct, but it's used across the entire county. It's not just for Valley residents.
That's right,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
No, that's a good point of clarification. So that's why I say it isn't just a matter of convenience for valley folks. We have folks in Airway Heights who are coming and driving to the valley, so it's not necessarily more convenient for them. We have space here on the county campus that we can use for infractions.
And I just add to that too, it's not just for, we don't use that space just for infractions, we also use it for small claims. So I think we have what, two dockets a week, I think, out at the Valley office for small claims cases.
So one thing we don't do anything criminal out there. It would be really difficult if we ever had to do a trial out there. Imagine trying to transport jurors, security. So that's just not a realistic option for that location. But yeah, we do have a steady small claims and infraction docket out there.
So the purpose of that, I'm just gonna ask then, since it's across the county, all that is.
Why do we have a valley location? I think to be good teammates with the valley, they like to be included, and every time we've met with their government, they've been just really kind and we like I said, we like the relationship that we have with Spokane Valley. We provide them a great service. I think they have considered maybe starting their own court, and so when they crunch the numbers, they realize we are really efficient and provide them with a great service. So it works for us too. We want to stick by it. I think it's a good relationship. I just question whether we need to be renting that space out there, or at least whether that should come out of district court budget as opposed to a county obligation, because it's the building.
I would add to that too, there is some there's a convenience factor too for folks. So for people who do live in the valley, it's really close. They can get there easily. There's, parking is easy. It's easy to get in and out of the actual building. So there are some advantages, I think, for folks who live in the valley, who have valley tickets or small claims case, they're from the valley. So I think there is a bit of a convenience factor there too for valley residents.
Yeah, there are places that are less expensive. And, but we have to provide security, correct? Because
That's true, and I hear that's what $150,000 a year that the county is paying, county general fund is paying for security out there, and the only reason to pay that is for folks who are going to court out there. Because the sheriff's office, they don't need security, they are their own security. So
Right.
yeah, that I mean, it may be, and I don't know if it's this year that we want to focus on that, or maybe next year you want to take a look at that, but I think that's an opportunity or something that we could look at to curb the budget down the road.
In addition to the courtroom that we have out there, we also have there's a judge's chambers, and then there's a kind of a administrative, well, there's a break room, but there's also like an administrative area that has 3 employees that work there involved in, helping with tickets and those kinds of things. So we have 3 district court employees that are out there. And so we have kind of a reception and admin area that we use as well. So there's the courthouse or the courtroom, there's the judge's chambers, the kind of admin area and a break room that are all the spaces that are used by district court and by folks who are accessing. And then the other side of the building is all sheriff's department.
We had mentioned possibility of closing that a couple weeks ago as a budget savings. And we quickly got an email, they recall, saying we're not looking at doing that, we're not wanting to do that. So it was something that the budget office had put out. Realizing the advantages of the valley and somebody who lives east, never lived in court, I probably love to go there too. But it was something we had brought up as a possible. budget savings.
Right, I think we just had to talk through what, I mean, that's when it was
More
the
discussion.
first time of talking that it was not just for the valley, it was also for across the entire county. Yes, it's a convenience of not parking, but if, I mean, I don't, we knew it was $75,000 to rent the space.
Plus the security.
Security, and- I mean, so these are all just new.
Yeah.
I mean, so what we need to know is what is the total cost of that? And if it went away, what would be the cost here? So
What are the termination requirements in that? Is there a 6-month notice? I mean, what are some of the, what's kind of the fine details? of that?
so we can't make, I mean, that's where it's hard for us to make decisions when we don't have all the information presented to us.
You can get it.
So.
I was gonna say too, would you need the back office if you were centralize the services down here, would you need the receptionist and all those as well?
Well, I think we could repatriate those positions to the campus here. Hopefully those folks, I think they like being out there, frankly, but we said, if you're county employees, if you work for the county, you're at the county campus, believe they would need to come out. But yeah, that's another space. If we didn't have court out there and infractions, we wouldn't need to maintain that space either. In terms of termination, I don't know what the requirements are, because one of the reasons is we're not signatories to this. It's not our authority at all. We didn't sign that agreement. We're just getting the bill for it every year. All right.
And commissioners, our office does receive that bill and work on this contract in conjunction with all the rest of our contracts with the city of Spokane Valley. So we have all the information and we'll get it pulled together in kind of a cohesive presentation for you.
Do you know how long, like, when did that start?
The most recent contract was inked 2014, so it's been about a decade.
But was it there prior to 2014 and that was
Yes.
just the most updated?
Yeah, there was
Okay.
one in 2007, it looks like.
Okay, so
I think was when the building was either originally owned by the county and given to the valley, or the county helped the valley purchase it. I know we had some original rights to that facility as well.
it's, I mean, the thing that kind of stands out to me when you talk about some of the other costs that are there is, I mean, I know it's not totally apples to apples, but when you look at you know, the contract with the sheriff's department, I mean, any of the work that is done in the valley for the valley picks up those costs. I mean, so I mean, yes, this is a regional service, but I mean, it sounds like a lot of this is for the valley. I mean, I've heard that said many times here, and it seems that a lot of the cost though is coming back on the county, and just it's hard for me to not think of the sheriff's contract that we have with the valley and the way that is structured.
Yeah, and what the decision the valley could make is have, instead of using district court, they could have a municipal court.
Correct.
But then all the costs are borne by them. So.
Or use our district court, but pay for our district court, so, you know, through some more equitable contract, I guess. So.
And not to go down a rabbit trail, and John and Sherry, you can correct me if you can pull me back off the rabbit trail. You know, we handle valley cases, right? If they had their own court, they'd be handling their own cases. So there would be some adjustment if we said, you know, no to the, you know, we're not going to be in the valley anymore. The valley decided to stand up their own court. They of course would handle all of their own cases. Any cases from the valley that get direct filed with us now would stop. And so that is going to have some adverse effect, I think, on our overall numbers, as well as, you know, some revenue in court. I don't know what those numbers look like, but that is another kind of thing to factor in there, because that would, if that was to happen and they were to say, great, we're going to do our own thing, there's going to be some adverse effect overall to district court as far as numbers go. Don't know what that actually looks like, but there's something else to kind of.
There are 12% of our filings on average over the last 5 years, so it's pretty substantial.
So that gives a little, I don't know what that equates to actual dollars, but yeah. So,
Yeah, So yeah, so I think we would want to take a look at that as well, and know what those numbers and what the possible effect would be as we look at making decisions. Sure, Jordan.
Couple questions. Well, for budget, if the Valley rent is to stay in the budget, does it make sense to be in district court's budget as an expense? Would that be consistent with other
Yes.
departments?
Yep, because then it's incorporated in the bill back to the city of Spokane Valley for the services that district court provides to the city of Spokane Valley.
But it's not currently paid for by the Valley, correct?
Not outright, because it's, as they were explaining, it's certain types of filings are held out there. So it's not like we, the agreement is that we pay for a lease of space with the city of Spokane Valley. And then we turn around and we say, okay, now this is how much it costs district court to operate. And one of those operating costs is that lease where they rent that space.
Okay. Just on the PowerPoint, I was looking at the remaining options for the 51,000. You had the salary rollover, right? Yeah, that was one. And then there's another bullet that says covered by anticipated annual department attrition in 2026. What is that?
Unspent salary, basically,
That's
so
the
that
same
it
thing.
includes, yeah, but during that current year rather than a rollover, prior year is how that means.
Oh, I see.
Or out unpaid medical leave would be another example.
Oh,
Substantial amount of that the last couple of years.
and then the non-general fund sources would be due fee or other, some kind of one-time.
Yeah.
Source, okay.
Then we just have two remaining slides. If you go to the next one, I'll cover these last two remaining ones. These last two slides are just kind of a reminder that when we do, do our budget cuts and such, there are real life, real person results of that. We've, over the last two budget cycles, we've lost 3 positions. And those have all been administrative support specialists, folks who are kind of frontline people who are dealing with the public on a daily basis. And then if you go to the next slide, what that looks like is, customer service hours by phone and in person will be reduced. That's just positive fact. We see about 188 people a day in district court. And of course, we have fewer people handling those matters at the counter. That creates a customer service issue. And then this last one I think is important just as a kind of a glance forward. If we continue to lose staff due to these budget constraints, and again, nobody has a lot of control over revenues coming in. We understand that, but there may be an issue as it relates to services that are not currently statutorily required by the court. One of those services that the court provides is collection on unpaid fines for civil infractions. We do that just because we are able to do it, but it's not statutorily required. And so that would be one of the things that if we continue to lose folks, we're probably not going to be able to provide that service of collection. And it's not a small number. In fiscal year 24, 1.4 million came in on civil infraction fines, and that was state and local to the general fund. So there is some, potential significant impact if we aren't able to do collections on those cases. We're not statutorily required to. So as we start looking at what we have to do as a court, we start with what are we statutorily mandated to do, and collections is not part of that. And so that could potentially be a real life, situation if we continue to have to lose staff because of cutbacks. So we just wanted to make sure folks knew that. I think that wraps up our budget presentation.
So where does the revenue that is derived from the collections process go?
These kids go to the general fund, correct?
Yeah.
Part of it
It
goes to
also
the state.
goes to the general fund, and then there's also state revenue that goes to the state.
So I
But
think
the 1.4 is
Yes.
directly to this. Stays local.
Here, 1.9 went to the state. State gets a cut, but and it was substantial. So a little more clearly, it goes to district court. It's recognized as district court revenues.
Yeah.
In general fund.
Yeah.
So if the revenues go away, there's gonna have to be some expense offsets for that as well. So that's the piece. And we talk about expenses a lot, but the revenue component's important. And for the revenue, that if you look at your net budget, 4.5 million in revenue and 7.3 million in expenses. So there's almost 3 million of the delta that the general fund's making up for supporting district court. So it's important to keep those in context, and you can't look at only one. You've got to look at both of them together.
Thank you.
I think as far as your expense reduction suggestions, my suggestion to you would be you have attrition, you have vacant positions throughout the year. Every department does. It would be a natural budget adjustment to reflect those, and some sort of a vacancy adjustment in your budget. Otherwise, any department would be artificially having a higher budget than they need. So I think that would be an appropriate thing to do, a budget adjustment down in your guys's district court budget to show a vacancy adjustment of that 50 some odd $1,000. That helps you close the gap without doing funky carryover things, which the board has generally not been inclined to do that. So you have a bunch of one-offs happening throughout the general fund departments.
Thank you.
Tessa, can I just ask on the report that the commissioners have for district court? Do you know, will that be adjusted on the line that says the 134,088 would be adjusted to the 51?
That's the target budget adjustment. Yeah. We'll work.
Yes,
We're
yes.
working back with every department as you come in and identify your adjustments down. We'll work back with you in the adaptive tool to make the adjustments that you guys, because you guys have found one that was a double count. So we'll harmonize those with you.
In the next couple of weeks, tomorrow, we're doing the revenue presentation, the official public hearing. And so up until we get to that point, we want to keep working off all the numbers as originally published. And then some point after that, we'll do a version 2 with all the changes. Either mistakes we've corrected that we found to date, decisions the board has made, and then we'll do the same thing probably the next public hearing and then do a different version. But we're not doing changes in real time, so we don't lose version control and people are talking off different sets of numbers and getting confused.
Thanks.
Just a clarification on your comment, Scott.
Yeah.
With the revenue kind of being incorporated back into the budget. Is that a similar situation with the medical examiner that we had?
Yeah, exactly.
Where the department may not see the revenue from a money flow perspective or from an accounting perspective, if according to the budget documents is being used to cover the expenses of the department from the general fund.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Work there. Able to show that better for the departments.
The revenue coming through.
Yes, it's all on the same report as their expenses. Very easy to see.
So, because we know we're all transitioning to work days, so it's this, you know.
Learning curves all around.
Yes, exactly.
All right, folks. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for taking this seriously and bringing forth some realistic idea. I do want to thank you for that.
Yeah, appreciate it very much. Yeah, thanks.
Good seeing you all.
You.
Wow. Yes.
Just how I feel today.
I know, they just need to lose or Astros need to lose.
Couple more, getting there.
Today was a good day.
Very good.
Oh.
Nothing can bring it down.
I did, really?
Not even better.
Yesterday was a pretty good day.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Coming. Should have brought my glasses. Okay,
Well, and we have it on our computers. as well.
Okay.
That's why when we're looking at our computers, it's so we can actually see
Oh,
the
yeah, I'm
the
fine.
slides.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm grateful to have a chance to answer questions and sort of give you, I don't know who's the slide for sure.
Ron.
Oh, there. Thank you. It's not just kind of an overview. My pet peeve is being read to, especially on PowerPoint. So I'm not gonna read the slides because I'm fairly confident that you are all capable of reading them on your own and probably have already. One thing that if we could go to the next slide, I did want to clarify on this one. Courts aren't revenue generating, it's just more to explain where money is coming from because it shows up on the agency summary as revenue. But it's also helpful to know that it's not just general fund money that we use. But I did want to clarify that courts aren't revenue generators. We can go to the next one. It talks about our FTE history. And one of the things that I did want to clarify, it sort of sounds nicer than it was. With the loss of state BECA funding, we had to lay off 2 people. And I don't know if you guys have ever had to do that, but it really is a difficult situation. And what's hard for us is that while the people went away and that's sad, the work did not. Just the state funding went away, the work didn't. We're just trying to figure out ways to continue to do more with less. This next one is, we wanted to clarify some of the discrepancies that you might see in the workday. I'm gonna explain the part about food. In the 2026 budget, Workday shows us as having a $15,000 budget request for food. I wanted to clarify, that's not judges getting lunches or anything like that. It used to be under the line item for juror lunches. When we have a jury that's deliberating, we provide them a lunch so they can keep on working. So it minimizes potential of having a mistrial and having to do things all over again because, you know, somebody was at a local restaurant, said something and saw something or anything like that. It just keeps it tighter and is kind of a best practice. And one of the other things I did want to give a shout out to my colleagues, when we have a jury, whether they are deliberating or not, the judges on their own dime bring breakfast food, snacks and stuff like that. But the only thing that is general funded is a deliberating lunch for those folks. And I'm going to hand it over to Ashley, our court administrator, because the numbers up there, I can't read, but here, like the bottom part of those numbers, it shows that it might look like we're making a request for new money when we're not, and she can explain that better than I can.
Yeah, really, yeah, and I mean, this is, I mean, as we just said with the last record. I mean, Workday is a learning experience right now. I mean, everyone's learning as we go, trying to figure it out. So yes, so just now we're trying to get into that position, and I think we all understand that, yes, if it's jury food, that is a very appropriate line item because.
Well, with Workday, we worked hard to reduce the number of codes. So I think what Ash will be showing is what was multiple codes that we have rolled up into one. They can still look at them at the next level down to do the accounting by each one, but fewer lines when you have, and the example Tessa gave us when he was speeding tickets. We had different budget lines for 1 to 5 miles an hour over, 6 to 10, 11 to 15. So you can see where we might have 5 lines that to the court, it might matter. But in our view to the board, traffic fine is a traffic fine. You don't want to see 5 different things of it. So that's, you'll be seeing that theme through several things, which is just a changeover of accounting names. And I'll let Ashley explain this one.
But, and I think,
thank you for that background. I know that it doesn't just impact Superior Court. I just think it's important for the board to be aware that as you looked at that, I mean, it makes it look like we were like, let's go ahead and add some money in this area, when really that wasn't it. It was just existing funding that we had received in years prior, rolled up into one. And Jeff and his team have been swamped and doing a great job. And so the court, once budget is wrapped up, December-ish, we really want to work with Jeff and his team to make sure that we know how Workday rolls it all up so that we can track what we need to track, so that this time next year, we're not in this boat of, we're not exactly sure what these codes are, because it doesn't make us feel good. But so that's the point of this slide, is just to make sure that the board knows it wasn't new funding that we're requesting, it's just the existing funding was rolled up in one.
Okay, next slide, please. And this one just summarizes our nearly $500,000 of proposed reductions. And kind of like everybody else, it's a slim budget and it's hard to cut, but we worked really hard to find almost that $500,000, which leads us to the next one. We don't really have anything that we're not, required to be doing. So it's very, very difficult to cut. The only thing that we don't have to do involves the therapeutic courts. And it's not just because I'm the therapeutic judge. The Washington State Institute of Public Policy has talked about how therapeutic courts are the most effective programs in reducing crime. And it's also a good investment because every dollar invested saves $4 on the back end. And that's literally the only thing that we don't have to do by law. Because I know that, in difficult budgetary times, it's kind of like, okay, what do we have to do? What do we not have to do? And, it might be a bell and whistle that we like to do, but it doesn't make financial sense. Even though it's something that we don't have to do, I think it does make financial sense. So that's just my pitch on that. And then we've also been working really hard on efficiencies. And again, I'm not gonna read these, but we have really put our heads together on how can we do more with less? How can we be more efficient? How can we increase the use of technology? How can we provide, in a sense, we're sort of in the customer service business too, in a different type of way. How can we make what we do work better for the citizens while we're doing our required work? And there's another page of efficiencies that we've put in. And I do want to give a shout out to District Court. We've been working really hard together to try to figure out things that we can collaborate on, ways that they can help us out. And we continue to do that. We have a very positive relationship with them. One of the things that I'm going to highlight in a minute is the 24/7, 365, the courts. We have somebody on call and available literally every day, all year. And so if we could go to the moving forward slide. As a co-equal branch of government, we really want to work hard to partner with you guys. I know that you don't have a bucket of money to help everybody do what they need to do or what they want to do. But we want to work with you folks on how we can partner together to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can for the citizens of Spokane County. And sort of going back to that, I'm drawn to what Chair Cooney said at the State of the County. Our population was around 550,000, projected to go to 600,000 by 2030. More people, while it means an increased tax base, it also means more legal issues. And what we've seen over the years, and I apologize, these didn't make the slides, but these are just some recent stats. And I'm happy to provide them to you. I didn't use COVID during for the COVID data for the unlawful detainer hearings, but that has gone from in 2022, from 1,408 hearings. In 2024, it was 3,963 hearings. Going back to the 24/7, 365, during the court day, we all take turns reviewing search warrants that come in, and there are a lot of them. When you're on call after 5 o'clock, they're yours. And those have also significantly increased. For instance, again, pre-COVID, we had 1,700 in 2019. In 2024, we had 3,283. And just this year, by the end of July, we had 1,920. So every year we're on pace to continue to do more than we did the year before. And this is a good opportunity to clarify something. The first part of my statement got cut off of a media interview because when I was talking about the impact of civil cases and public safety, what I was talking about was civil protection orders. And there was a legislative change in 2022 that significantly changed things. And as a result of that, it's easier to file a protection order. One of the parts of the legislative changes involve the quote unquote no wrong door. So it's not as if we can tell somebody, you know, district court should really be hearing that, not us. We can't send folks away. And you can track the significant increase because when the law became effective in 2022, 2021, we had 1,653 total cases on the docket. And the next year, when it was effective in 2022, it was almost a full 1,000 more. It was 2,643. And in that year, we had to bump 38 cases. And the reason why that's a public safety issue is because you finally have somebody who's at a point where they are in a position to go to a court and say, I need protection, please help me. And we have to tell them, here's a temporary order. Now that the person knows and they're mad at you, come back. And that first year, there were 38 cases bumped. The number of cases on the docket have continued to increase. 2023, it was roughly 3,400. 2024, it was 4,385, and we had to bump 320 cases. And year to date, we are already at 2,750 and have had bumped 137 cases. So that's why it's a public safety issue, and I wanted just to clarify that. So moving forward, you know, one of the things that I think is really kind of exciting, both for the citizens and for the court, we're actively exploring going to remote juror orientation. I don't know whether you've ever seen the parking lot on a Monday, but that's when we have our jurors come in to get oriented, explain what's going on, have them exposed to some resources to give them an idea of what they're doing. And King County does it online, and we're exploring the possibility of doing that. That will reduce our juror expenses, and frankly, I think will be convenient for the citizens because somebody might work Monday through Friday, and if we give them a window of, hey, do this within the next week and certify that you've watched these items, you know, they can do it on a Saturday or something like that, and it's a lot more convenient for them. So we're always trying to find ways to do what we do better and more efficiently. One of the things is that, you know, in past years, we've requested additional FTEs, a second courthouse facilitator and a business analyst. While they still exist, we recognize, you know, this is not a time to ask for those things, but so we're not, but still there. And then the next slide is, it's when I heard that, sorry, next, sorry, Ron. We're all connected in the criminal justice system, and I know that that's a part of it, but it's, you know, a big part of what the courts do. And we're kind of at a crisis point. I don't think I need to tell you guys that with the increased population, increased pressure on all the criminal justice partners, more funding of law enforcement means additional cases, and it's kind of a bottleneck because that also creates a need for additional prosecutors, public defenders, court clerks, judges in courtrooms. while we can be really efficient with technology on civil matters, we're pretty limited on what we can do in a criminal setting without having to do it all over again because an appellate court said you can't do that. It violates the state constitution on right to confrontation, which is slightly different from the federal one, and there's some case law on it. And that just involved a witness, much less a full-blown criminal court. And unless you have any questions, thank you very much for your time. You guys have an incredibly difficult job. I don't diminish that at all. You have everybody coming in saying we need more money. Give us some. I know you don't have it. But we appreciate your consideration of what we've asked for and trying to hit the target and our challenges associated with that. Do we have any questions?
Sorry, I had to step out for a minute. So
Okay.
looking back to the proposed reductions, you have the court reporter positions. And then contract reduction for drug court and mental health court. Does that mean there'll be fewer case managers? Or what is the impact of that? Or is it a currently unfilled position?
I worked with Pioneer about a month and a half ago to explain, that the court was asked to take a cut and that part of what we were going to present to the board would be that Pioneer would need to absorb a cut as well. I asked them if there was going to be any reduction in what they could provide, that they would need to help me tell that story. They did not. I think from their perspective, they could have absorbed that 7% reduction. The 220 that we didn't meet, that if we have to absorb that, then it would be a participant cap. Because we don't have it anywhere except for therapeutic courts to make that kind of reduction. But the 7%, they felt like that was realistic based off of what they currently provide.
So Pioneer was able to absorb the 7% and currently there's no need for a participant. Today.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would like to publicly give a shout out to them. They do a great job.
Fantastic.
And I don't know whether you were here when I was talking about how therapeutic courts are the only thing that we're not mandated to do.
Yeah.
But how WISA has said that it's the most effective most effective programs to reduce crime. Again, I say this full disclosure of being a therapeutic judge right now, but I was a fan before because it does make sense.
Let me check with Justin on that, because is that within the amounts that were through the mental health?
No, that would be in addition to what we're also supporting through the CHTA, so they're separate. If you're asking about what we fund through Pioneer CHTA funds, and it does not include the amounts we're paying directly to Pioneer for other services provided outside of that program.
Okay, so this program is coming out of the general fund right now. It's not about mental health.
No, it is funded by mental health
Yes.
sales taxes.
So that's part of your cut, is to cut mental health sales tax spending?
It's part of the Pioneer contract.
But that's paid for with mental health sales tax, not
It's not
general fund.
dollars.
My hope is that those funds could go elsewhere to relieve that. We don't have general fund funding that isn't required by statute.
Right, but the problem would be
Yeah.
the mental health dollars can't go to support general fund items. So it would just go away, because the mental health dollars is specific for mental health purposes. So we couldn't move dollars out of the therapeutic courts into other general fund activities.
I didn't know if crisis support, if general fund currently supports some of that. And then that amount could be reduced by the 220. I wasn't sure.
Mental health also has a no taxation clause with it. So it's only for new and expanded services. So when it's something that's already happening, even if it qualifies, if it doesn't hit that new and expanded, we can't use it.
And again, I didn't know if there are
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
discussions to expand. Our target, the 9.7 or 9.6 million did include those funding, so it was all rolled up into one. And so we have to go through line by line and see what could we cut, and
We can do some more work offline with you. Yes.
So last week, Wasac had a quarterly meeting. And after the doom and gloom, talked to a couple other county commissioners, other counties in the state. And asked, well, how are you gonna approach the reduction in revenue and increased cost, and then caseload standards have now increased and everything like that? And two of them said, we're gonna set a budget, what we can afford to spend, and then leave it up to the departments to say, you gotta pick and choose what cases you're gonna hear and what cases you're not gonna hear. What programs you're going to live within that budget. What would that mean if we were to do something like that here?
Well, a couple of things.
And I'm not suggesting,
Right.
I'm just asking a question because I thought, geez, that's an interesting approach. You're obviously going to see less activity at the court, and leaving the judges to determine that as opposed to county commissioners or something else would make sense, but I'm just curious
Right.
what that would mean.
There's a sort of a fundamental law, no offense, with that, because the judges don't control the cases. We're on the receiving end, we're sort of the tail getting wagged by the dog. And so if an executive branch of the government wants to tell executive departments, hey, here's your, piece of the pie, figure out what cases you're going to file, that's one thing. But the judges don't control that. We sort of have to eat whatever pie is given to us. And so that's part of the challenge of that. And even with the that the criminal section of the budget and executive departments, they do control a lot of the criminal cases. But then we have the issue of like our civil protection order, and that's not something that anybody else can control. And those are going through the roof too, and the unlawful detainer filings, those are, by the citizens who file those. So we have to take what's coming to us, and we don't have much control over what comes to us.
Yeah, that same approach was going to be used for the prosecuting attorney's office as well as PD. So I'm just real curious as to, is that wishful thinking, or is that a plan for disaster? Because I know that, that if you guys are put in a position to where you've got to regulate your budget, regulate the course cases you hear based upon a budget, that means public safety is going to take a hit. And so there's a lot of discussions going on right now, and everybody's trying to find their way through this new dynamic.
Yeah, if unfortunately we don't get to pick and choose what cases come to us.
Yeah.
We're just the receiving end of cases. So we've always had historically very high filings for felonies based on our population. We can't control that. I mean, if somebody files a case, we have to hear the case, whether it's a civil matter or criminal matter, family law matter, tenancy, all of the things that we do, we're just catching the pitches and we don't get to decide a pitch count.
So the comment from the other commissioners is probably a comment of desperation more than realistic. Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. It's across the state, I'm sure there are a lot of folks in very difficult positions because there's a lot of unfunded mandates. There are many things that folks need to do and not enough money to do it. They don't have a position at all.
So, Judge, a couple of things, with the new 72-hour, how is that affecting you? that you have to?
It's still pretty new. We had our first one on Thursday, what would that been, September 5th?
Yeah.
And fortunately, knock on wood, the fear that transport had about going long and having overtime costs has not yet materialized. But again, we don't control the cases and you know, who gets arrested over the weekend.
Can you explain what that is? Just
Sure.
for people to understand.
There was a procedural court rule that gave a much longer time period for somebody who's arrested. Because there's an arrest, they have to have a probable cause determination within 72 hours, and that's why we do have 24/7 judicial. We review new arrests over the weekend, and then they're put, say, on our Monday first appearance docket, and then they're given an arraignment date. And all this is required by law. It went from being, you know, we had to have it done within 15 days, and which was a bit of a challenge to get counsel on board because they have a constitutional right to counsel. And a lot of our folks are indigent. And that went to 3 days. So 3 days from the filing of the charges by the prosecutor's office, we have to arraign the person. And so far, we've been able to adjust and, you know, our criminal justice stakeholders have been great about trying to figure it out. The prosecutor's office, I understand, has a new charging prosecutor who's one of their most senior people. So more circumspect with what gets filed. And then that starts the 3-day clock. Because we do it after our first appearances, the public defender who has had a kind of an attorney of the day at the first appearance, they've been able to cover the arraignments that start after. It's a totally separate docket. So far, we've been able to finish by 5 and not have the transport issues. I haven't heard anything. It's still very new in the process. One of the concerns that we had raised in a letter to the Supreme Court during the comment period was crime victims have a right to be heard at a hearing where release decisions are being made or bond arguments. One of the changes is that you could now make a bond argument at an arraignment where we didn't used to allow that. And now we have to allow it. And so my big concern was getting notice to the crime victims as to afford them an opportunity to exercise their right to be heard on bond decisions and release decisions. I haven't heard of issues, and as presiding, I hear a lot of issues. But it may be new enough that it hasn't percolated. I don't know, maybe they're able to get a hold of folks, but
You haven't seen any issues yet with the public defenders with the fact that our caseloads are happening and.
not that, and it's because of the way that it's structured. Where we have seen it be a big issue is out of custody arraignments. We received an email early September from the County Public Defender's Office that they had hit their limit, and it kind of freaked me out, to be honest, because there were still 3 weeks left in September, and they were saying we can't appoint any more public defenders to out of custody arraignments, and with 3 more weeks in the month, that was very concerning. So I reached out to Director Sparver because there's a court rule that the Supreme Court passed that said to maintain independence and not have the courts involved. It has to go to an executive agency. So I alerted Director Sparver that, this, the light is at the end of the tunnel is another train and it's barreling down the tracks.
And it seems like it's conflicting information, the state Supreme Court and the Bar Association.
Oh,
What everyone's, what's happening, but it's yeah, it's hard to look at it from a Fed standpoint versus what a judge is held to.
right. It puts the courts in a really untenable position because
and then you're continuing cases.
Correct. Which it flies in the face of what I think they were trying to do. Well, I don't know what they were trying to do, but it flies in the face because every hearing that, especially an unnecessary one or one that's not meaningful, increases the opportunity for somebody to fail to appear, to get a warrant, to then get picked up on the warrant, then to have yet another hearing and a first appearance. It doesn't make sense at all, but I have to follow the law that's given to me, whether I agree with it or not.
So one thing that I've heard in another court, not here in Spokane County, but others, where, you know, you've got your docket, you've got it set for the week, and then suddenly pleas are happening, you know, settlements are happening. And so your docket suddenly opens up. It's like, you know, hard for you because you're trying to manage all that. But then you can't fill those dockets again. Is that happening here?
Not as frequently. I mean, in my world, in my perfect world, if I were queen, you know, I would say, oh, this trial went away, kind of like how we did it in family law. Okay, this settled, next up. But it's a little harder to do when it's a complex trial and you've got witnesses who are coming in. It's a little harder to say, oh, by the way, a spot opened up, so can you get your detective or your medical expert to come in today or tomorrow? We try to fill them as we can if something does open up. It's just harder to do that. I'd love to know what county that is, to see if there are efficiencies we can steal.
It's a different state.
Oh, okay.
So, not all Washington State.
Yeah, no, that's,
But it's just, yeah, it's just harder, you know. As those things are happening in your system, we're all trying to look at how to make the system as efficient and effective as possible. For our constituents, and so it's, you know, so it's just that. Trying to, you know, ask the questions and figure out how we can, you know, do better, right? Because I see, you know, one of your, you know, requests is to, you know, for the 14th judge. And we just had our meeting with, you know, everyone knows Matt Anderson is coming around and talking to everybody, and I love that. But it's like, you know, we know where our funding is. So if we ask for the 14th judge, you know, because it's a different process now than it was, you know, 15 years ago or whenever the last one was requested, the 13th judge.
27.
20, when was it?
27 years.
27 years. So it's a whole different process.
Last time the Mariners won the AL West, right?
Just about.
Focus, you're
All right, back to this topic.
So I mean, I'm just trying to think, it's like, if we got, I mean, because we know there's a need. We don't have the funding, so if we go and ask for it and know in good faith we don't have the funding for it. That's the piece that I'm concerned about to the legislature.
And I don't know how King County did it, because I remember I was losing my mind when I found out they got an additional judge lickety split. The legislature wasn't even in session. I'm like, how in the world did they do this? But what they had done when they got their authorizing legislation is they said up to a certain number, and it was again contingent on the funding, which gave King County more flexibility. So when they said, oh my God, we're drowning in unlawful detainers, they went to whatever the King County, I don't care, whatever their funding, their local funding source is. And they said, yeah, you know, that makes sense, and we've got the funds for it, we're gonna invest in this. And then boom, they had they were able to have that additional judge. So I don't know that it would be disingenuous to ask for additional judges, even if we can't fund them right this minute. I'm hopeful that I'm sure you guys are hopeful that the revenue situation changes for the state and local funders across the state. And that would give you guys flexibility to, you know, if we have a year where there's excess funding, it's a lot faster to be able to appoint somebody. You guys can control when the appointment happens and say, you know what, and I get it. You know, we don't want somebody else appointing. We'd rather have our local voters pick, and then so you could establish it, and then it could be an open seat at an election. I mean, But King County did it, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember thinking that was a pretty slick way to do it because it didn't force somebody to fund it. And it gave them flexibility for when the financial situation changed.
And I will say, this week is one where we don't have a ton of criminal trials going out because they've resolved, which is fantastic. But then a trial judge that the trial fell apart, they pick up protection orders, they pick up domestic motions, things that most of the time our court commissioners do. There's all calls all the time. Hey, if anybody has time, can you take 3 or 4 of these? And then we deal them out to the trial courts. Because even though a judge does have things to work on that's not on the bench and my search warrants and all that, but we do try to keep the hearings flowing and when we know enough in advance, a day or two, that somebody's trial did fall apart, then we do a really good job of getting hearings to plug those holes.
And I did also want to just highlight that part of the reason trials resolve is that we have a spot for them. I always go down to a jury. We try more cases than resolve the day of the trial, but sometimes it's defendant seeing the jury come in and all of a sudden stuff gets real. And they have an absolute right to plead guilty. And so a couple of times I've had to go down to a jury panel who's kind of annoyed that they came all the way down. And I'm like, the fact that you were here is why there was accountability because it wasn't until the defendant saw you guys were here and we were for reals going that he decided that he would rather take a plea than roll the dice in front of a jury. So I did want to clarify that.
No, definitely.
And same thing happens with civil cases too, which can be frustrating as a trial court judge because there's an awful lot of work that goes into trial prep for a civil case. And part of you is like, wow, great that, mesothelioma case settled, yay. But on the other side, it's like, and now I know an awful lot about mesothelioma and the fights we were gonna have about the evidence that you wanted to have in it. But it's kind of a complicated dance, but we really try hard and we appreciate the support that you guys give us to have us do that.
I appreciate the information, the comments, and I think, it is a struggle because it as you have your little hourglass, I mean, it is all part of the system. We've got to figure out how to make
We appreciate everything. Oh,
Just one clarification. So the 3-day arraignment rule applies only to in custody.
no, in and out.
We tried to read it that way, but it's anybody that's held on release
conditions,
so
so
which everybody is required to stay in touch with their attorney. Everybody's required to
To
not
stay
to
law
commit
abiding.
any more law violations. I mean, so
yeah, we were sort of
we tried.
Josh.
I know the same question.
Yeah. You talked about continuances, we've discussed it a bit. I think it was back 2019, 2018, 2019. There's actually a lot of media attention around it. Superior Court, the judges were going to start limiting continuances or kind of cracking down on the needless continuances. I know COVID hit, nothing came of that. I think I asked maybe 2022 timeframe how that was coming. Nothing had been implemented. Has anything been implemented since then to limit the number of continuances that are happening at Superior Court?
Not necessarily a formal policy, but we do look at the age of the case. And some cases like a Class A sex offense, those simply take longer. We also have a huge backlog at the state crime lab. I just took a plea it's Monday, so it would have been last Thursday, no, Friday, on somebody who they were 18 months behind on a blood result. So there's that. We're also balancing, you know, if a public defender says they cannot effectively represent their client and need additional time, it's something that you have to balance where it's like, okay, this is getting ridiculous, you know, what have you done, what haven't you done, how much time do you need? Okay, you still have to do one more witness, can you do it, can you interview them on Monday, we can start on Tuesday, things like that. It's not just you know, hand them out like candy. They're kind of an individualized approach, and it's really tricky with the ineffective assistance of counsel claim. Hopefully that will be going down with them having less cases. I know that I will be less tolerant of that. It's kind of like, well, you can't say you're overworked now. You gotta work your cases.
Well, my guess is the judges back in 2019 weren't talking about ones that were waiting on, you know, on blood work to be done or anything like that. I mean, I don't think that policy would have been brought forward had there been a bunch of anecdotes on why that policy would work. At the time, I think it was said that attorneys or clients were asking for continuances that the bench at the time thought were being handed out too much like candy. So what's changed from then to now? There seemed to be a real urgency by the court to crack down on the continuances. It still hasn't happened, and there's a backlog.
I don't know that it hasn't happened because we do give extra attention to older cases.
Okay.
You know, you have to justify with an actual good cause reason for wanting more time. And then it's not just you get a clip of time of whatever you ask for. It's like, okay, your detective is on vacation. When's he back? So instead of just giving a 6-month clip or something like that, it's okay, you know, your lead detective's gonna be back on the 15th. Okay, the following Monday, we can have this go. So it's trying to make it a little more individualized and not cookie cutter, or, you know, just, okay, they asked for 6 months, they're getting 6 months. That doesn't happen.
Okay, but there's no policy that's been put in place to make sure the bench is sticking to that?
It's not necessarily a policy. I don't know that we have a written policy, but it's certainly something that.
You said there was no written policy, so I'm just confirming that there is no written policy.
Just the one from 2019, but there's an understanding, and we talk about it at the, you know, the judges' meetings, that, you know, chief criminal is, you know, their task is to move cases. And there's a high emphasis on getting cases out timely, and ensuring that we don't have speedy trial issues.
Okay.
And one of the things that the bench has, we're trying out is doing that caseload work was just a 1-year rotation. And we're playing around with, does it make more sense for it to be a 24-month or an 18-month? Because again, as a new judge takes on that giant caseload, it takes a few months to kind of familiarize yourself with the caseload and start hearing the same requests from the same people again and again. And so right now it's an 18-month rotation where that judge is going to be responsible for that. The other thing that we did in 2019, which was pull off the first appearances from that judge's duties. Because in doing all of the case management and the first appearances, there was not enough time in the day, and presiding judge here was the one that was tasked with trying to do it all. There wasn't enough time in the day to not just grant it, to just blindly sign and say, oh, they both agreed, yep, we're gonna go ahead and kick this out 3 months. So we've tried to make some changes to our processes so that we can see that we can achieve the goals that we want. Things, I would encourage anybody on the board to come up and watch hearings where the judge inquires, you know, why is it that you need 3 months? What have you done on the case? I know that just a few weeks ago, there was a big World War III going on because attorneys had asked for the judge to move a trial date for the same excuses 3 times in a row. And the judge was like, no, yeah, this is what you said back in March. So while statistics don't always show that we've reduced the hearings that just get continued. We've made some strategic changes to allow the judge to have more eyes on a case. So again, we haven't seen the results that we'd love to. There's lots of things like the crime lab and the PD is changing, for prosecutors retiring, so they have less experience to kind of assess the cases. So we'd love to get to where we can come to you and say, we have achieved all of our goals that we set back in 2019, but I think we have improved.
Okay. Earlier this year, a couple months ago, it came up in discussion that there's a number of fees that are being waived by the bench after pretrial services has determined an individual's ability to pay.
Oh,
Can you speak to that? Is that accurate?
so what you're talking about are, what I think you're talking about are the promissory notes where pretrial services has done a financial assessment. Is there's,
I don't know. I just know a couple of months ago.
Sound right based on. the-
Okay.
Is that what I just know a couple months ago, we were told that there were individuals that after going through pretrial services, determined the amount by pretrial that they felt they could pay. Once they get into a courtroom, judges are then saying, no, you don't have to pay what pretrial has determined. Is that accurate? Is that not?
no, because there are two statutes. There's indigent and courts can't assess any fees, and there's indigent and able to pay. If somebody's indigent and able to pay, they execute a promissory note with the executive branch. The pretrial services, and it's not something that can be put on a judgment sentence. It's not a court cost that we can waive. We don't waive them. They're not on the judgment sentence. It's a separate civil debt that is owed from that person to the county. And it's sort of out of our hands. The ones that we're responsible for are legal financial obligations, you know, the crime victim fund assessment, the $200 court filing fee, any restitution, things like that. That's what we have control over. And case law has severely restricted based on an individual's ability to pay. If they're indigent and not able to pay, State v. Blazina and its progeny say, you know, courts, you can't assess any discretionary fees. We, even if they're indigent, we do assess mandatory legal financial obligations. It's not enough to make, you could even call it budget dust. It's the $15 domestic violence, no contact order fee. So there are a handful of fees that are mandatory, but the ones that you see on every case, those are discretionary, and a lot of the folks that we see are legally indigent and we're not legally allowed to assess fees to them.
Okay.
But what you're talking about is a civil matter that it's outside of the courts, with the exception of if there was a small claims filed or something like that, then a small claims judge would be assessing it. You know, whether Mr. Fitzgerald can, you know, put those out to collection or something, you know, that's, we try to stay in our lane. That's like an executive branch thing.
Okay. And on this year's presentation, it shows you're down 3 court reporters. And I apologize, I don't remember if it was 1 year, if it was when we were crafting the 25 budget or when we were crafting the 24 budget. I think you were down 2 at the time. And when we asked, you know, I think at the time those had been vacant, those 2 positions have been vacant for 18 months. I think when we asked, are you confident you'll fill them? The answer was, we hope.
Right.
So are those still the same? Does that 3 still include those 2 court reporter positions that were
Yes.
vacant over a year ago or
Yes,
actually 2 years ago?
And last year, the board elected to, well, based on the cuts that the board passed on to the court, basically one of them was funded during last cycle. And so this would, the other ones, we wouldn't have the funding for.
Yeah.
And so as we put in there, my hope is that if somebody were to apply and they were able to do the job that we would come down to the board and ask that the board fund that. And really the same is true with a lot of our cuts. You know, based on our projections, we believe that these are realistic. But if there's Caleb Sharp type case again, you know, that was very expensive. And so we would be down here to brief the board to let you know that there's these rare things that have come up that our expenses are getting out of whack and see if you'd be willing to help fund it.
Is AI or technology getting to the point where it could start doing some court reporter function? Or is that even allowed? I don't know laws.
It's not allowed for appellate purposes right now. What it can do is provide kind of a rough draft for the judge to review. It's not perfect. We actually, speaking of technology, I have, there's two recording softwares out there, two big ones. We have historically used FTR for the record is what it's called. All of our courtrooms are equipped with it for those times that a court reporter can't do X, Y, or Z. Competitor is called JAVS, Judicial Audio Visual System, I guess. And you know, they're salesmen. And so I've met with them. IT met with them. They're gonna come and prepare a quote. And I let them know this is not a 2026 ask. This is not anything in the next year, year and a half, 2 years, because I anticipate that the price tag is gonna be pretty big. But if they can start, if it's an improvement of the equipment that we currently have, then that would be something else to talk to the board about. But you know, salesman, I had no idea when he says, oh yeah, I can prepare a quote. I don't know what that stuff costs, the equipment and all that. So we are trying to stay informed of what all is out there in case the time came that it would be good enough. But as far as actual transcripts, it wouldn't, legally, they're not, AI is not there.
And that actually brought up a good point, because we are lower on court reporters. We share them all the time. For instance, I only have certain hearings on the therapeutic docket for which I need a court reporter to transcribe them. So my court reporter helps out in other courtrooms. And so if Terry, my court reporter, who's if she's covering a trial for another judge, and I have a plea and sentencing, I use the FTR Gold. So we really try hard to be flexible with the resources that we have so that we can get everything done. But yeah, we're looking at everything we can to become more efficient.
Thank you.
Just a handful of questions here. So on,
We're done.
just-
Yeah, you good time.
I have a small list here.
We haven't ordered in lunch yet.
I have a few. Okay, so there's currently 5 vacant positions. You say 3 court reporters and 2 Becca grant funded positions. And how is the Becca one, are those 2 with the change in funding? Are those going away?
They're gone.
They're gone.
They were gone.
Okay, so but in your budget that you submitted, your salaries are up $630,000. Budget 25 versus 26. If I'm reading this correctly, and please correct me if I'm not, none of the reductions that you're proposing are reflected in the budget yet in terms of individual line items.
They are.
They are, Scott, they're just in that,
Well, they're in a negative.
They're in the
they're in that big
Okay,
negative.
But
Yeah.
but in the, you haven't actually physically removed the positions in the budget, right? The 5, those positions.
I believe that we went in and unfund or negatived the 2 Becca as well as the 2 court reporter.
Okay, so we need to go out and just remove those headcount in the budget. Okay. And then what was, and the other thing I would suggest, depending on when those things get moved out, you have vacant positions throughout the year. Right? Every department does. And I suggested this to district court earlier. if you look at kind of your trend, if you consistently have two vacant positions after you've removed these out, if you consistently have two vacant positions, that is a salary savings. It's a big savings that you can have. And I would encourage you to look at that to budget for what you think your salaries are going to be. So you can do that through like a vacancy savings line and Tessa, the budget office, can help you with that. Do you have an idea? Because I think at the end of last year, you guys changed your staff from 37.5 to 40-hour work weeks. Do you have an estimate of what that's costing in the budget right now annually?
I don't off the top of my head. It's a good question. It's one of the things that, you know, I would encourage the board to look at across all departments. You know, while some are smaller and so they can make cuts to absorb that, I mean, that would be my OT time costs would go up. So I don't know that unless you're going to do it globally, that it makes sense to ask each department to go in reverse, but.
Yeah, not every department has moved to 40-hour work weeks, so there's quite a few that are still on 37.5. And then can you remind us, you said in 2014, the 3 FTEs increased for the 13th Judicial Department. Overall, there was an increase in 4 FTE from 23 to 20. What was the?
One is a fully grant funded safe baby court coordinator. So there's no funds that come from the general fund for that position. In fact, I'll be in front of the board sometime in the next few weeks to renew that contract or to request to renew.
Okay. Last question. So when you mentioned the Pioneer contract reduction in expenses, and we'll work through that more.
Yep.
I'm presuming that you also then reduced revenue for the mental health sales tax that would have come into increase. Okay. So net, I mean, our revenues went down, expenses went down, but revenues went down too. So
Right.
Overall, if you're looking at Superior Court kind of revenues less expenses, that particular move, that's kind of the point that I was making earlier, that particular move doesn't really help overall because it has some revenue offsets to it. So.
Right.
But yeah, okay, that was my questions. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay, I think you
We've done our time.
We did give you the award.
Served
for
your
the-
time.
Now we're budget.
Usually isn't the one on the hot seat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know that it was what we pointed out. This budget is still 220,000.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of cuts, but they are still over the target amount by about 221. If you look in the detail report, there's the 485 in parentheses, it shows the reduction. They made some additional changes along the way, but we're at 221 at this point on this budget. Send around another the schedule sheet of who goes when. But
Put it in the shared folder.
we'll put in the shared folder. Parks wanted a little bit more time. Met with them last week, working on some things. So we're gonna bring the outside agencies next week, which had been a request to move them forward anyway.
Yeah, in the prosecutor's office, ask for a continuance, maybe 6 months.
Certainly not 6 months. And we're moving vet service up a little bit to create a big block of time for detention, which we skipped last week, and then parks will come in. So you'll see the upload, all the things that were moved around are in the bright yellow.
Well, hang on. If they want to continue, we'll just do a kind of a CR and give you a flat budget.
I am really, what we are doing is CR.
We're doing that.
Exactly what we're doing. Flat budget.
Come on, if they want to continue it, well, we'll just hold you flat. And so if you can
Never mind.
talk to Preston, see if he's willing to make that
Strike
deal.
that.
Strike that request.
So other than that, which we'll send around, well, on the budget side, 1:30 we'll start up again. We might have some exec sessions
I guess we don't have executive.
Tomorrow.
So tomorrow, plan on exec sessions. In the morning. So,
You got done early today, for the morning.
so. Okay, so then, is there anything else to come before us before I do us? Okay. Then, we do have this afternoon, we will continue with using technology, juvenile court, scraps and public defense. We plan to go till 5 unless it.
Maybe we'll get done early again. I don't think anybody will complain.
Yeah, no. So, so we are just going to continue this meeting.